Welcome to the Pink Hearse podcast, a real and whimsical look at what it means to be fully alive with all the joy and chaos and pressure and vulnerability and beauty. Take the ride along with unexpected guests and be inspired to fall in love with your own unique destiny and meaning. In this episode, Zachary, Edward Crowe, and their guest, Normandi Ellis, peel out in the hearse and peel away the layers of the creative experience we call life. As a group, we gather to F the ineffable once and for all.
Sitting cold, waiting for lightning to strike, shivering. Sleeping in the vineyard, dream begging the grapes to become wine, crying. 1 inch from your beloved, praying to be touched, pouting. Drooling over an empty page, hoping the spittle becomes brilliance, waiting. Drop this phantom weight, unslouch. Bethlehem is inside you. Your wanting is a mirror. Wake up. Demand freedom. The gatekeeper is drunk and unconscious. Do not fear his growling snores. Snatch the keys, shake off the chains. See how they fall away like cobwebs in the sun. You baited yourself, don't you remember? Set the trap, became the prey, lost control. And how wonderful, for now here you are, caught and ready to begin this short walk home. This episode is sponsored by Invisible Friends. We can't see you, but we know you're here. Thank you. Our guest today is Normandi Ellis, spiritual minister, astrologer, author, clairvoyant, medium, Egyptian scholar, and travel guide through the inner and outer planes. Welcome back to the Pink Hearse podcast, Normandi.
Thank you, Zach. It's so good to be here.
And we got my brother Edward on board with us today. Edward is the co-host of Pink Hearse.
Hey.
We're riding.
Let's go.
So recently I was sent an envelope of over 1,000 Post-it note quotes that were handwritten by my friend Ruth Strasberg, who's 81, and she knows how much wisdom quotes mean to me, so she sent me this incredibly valuable treasure trove of quotes. And before each episode, I reach in and I pick one. Today's quote is from Seneca. Are you guys familiar with Seneca the Elder?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I'd never heard of him before. So Seneca says, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today."
Wow.
So here we are. Normandi, you just had a bit of a procedure. So again, I appreciate you with a bit of pain in your mouth. As I said, choosing our words wisely. Apparently people who are diagnosed with what I have, known as bipolar, use puns and humor as a coping mechanism. And so my pun for today that popped in my head as I was driving here is, a happy medium is a joyful psychic. And although you are perhaps a grouchy medium in pain, I hope this episode cheers you up and you become a happy medium.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I wanted to begin. I've been reading your book on angels.
Yes.
And this episode is an exploration of angels. In your own words from your book, you wrote, "In my own case, even before I wanted to learn the mysteries of Egypt, I wanted to know the secrets of God. I wanted to know that which seemed whispered behind the blue curtain of sky, and who exactly conversed with whom amid the wind in the trees. I wanted to see the big angels. Apparently, I am not the only one." Can you speak now? I don't know when exactly you wrote that book, but to your current situation, relationship to angels, please.
Wow. I have to say that it has been a bit of time since I spent a long, long time with my angels. I have meditation altars. I have pictures of angels hanging everywhere in my house. I don't know if this is exactly is the right way to say it, but I am fond of the angel of death. As I get older, I keep thinking, okay, I'm going to see you soon. And I am more and more curious about the way in which that happens. And so when I think about the angel of death, I have this picture that was drawn. It's in a museum. But it's a picture of a dark angel that's holding a baby in its arms. And there are what appear to be angels, like cherub type angels, following it, but they each turn into stars in this trail. And I think of those angels as connected to the beings that travel through the belly of the Great Mother in ancient Egypt, that they are the souls that are the star beings who wait to be born, who have already been born and are here on earth, and who died and returned to her. So every being, every soul has a star inside it. It's all of our star nature. And so I keep thinking I'm going to be able to see this being. One of the things that I would say I've been spending more time doing is not necessarily talking to the angel itself, but talking to the universe. Like I'm still trying to look up God's dress, you know what I mean? And I'm trying to see what's under the skirt of sky. I spend a lot of time doing that. So I'm very fascinated with astronomy these days. I'm fascinated with physics. I am not saying that I know a lot about it, but I keep looking at it probably every day. That's kind of my church, is to go and see what's in the sky now. I'm an astrologer, so I look at the stars and I like to know what they're doing. Was quite fascinated to discover that recent eclipses that we had in March were hitting my chart very strongly. And there was this parade of planets in the sign of Pisces, which we know of as water signs. And the planets themselves, I see, dressed up as angels, or they're angels dressed up as planets, whichever way you want to put that. And so I'm quite fascinated by the fact that once that eclipse hit, I developed a huge leak in the ceiling. It's kind of like right over my head where I'm sitting. Thank goodness it's not raining today. And I have a big bucket there, and the drops are coming in, and all of these planets in Pisces. And I'm thinking, oh, these are the angels. These are angel messages. I'm fascinated by it because when I was on the Nile and traveling on the boat at night, I saw the full moon rise, and I don't know exactly how to describe it except as hieroglyphic writing in words of light on top of the waters of Egypt on the Nile. And I looked at it and I kept thinking, I can read this, and I'm staring over the edge of the boat, and a couple of people come over and say, Normandi, what are you doing? And I'm saying, I can read this. And they look at it and they say, is that hieroglyphs? I was like, yeah. It was kind of great because I think all of nature is divine, is a divine realm. It's where we get our word nature is from the word nature, meaning God in ancient Egypt. And so it's all this divine spark that is in the night sky and is in the bucket behind me where all the water's being gathered. So I don't know if that answered your question exactly.
I have no questions in the hearse. It's just kind of the more I surrender into the silence and allow, that was everything to me. So thank you. Edward, please speak. I'm a bit tongue-tied.
That was incredible, Normandy. It made me think of something. I was trying to relate in some capacity, but your words were so eloquent. The only thing that came to mind to me to want to mention was I had the privilege of going to Egypt in 2019, and I was given a gift by a Native American friend of mine. It was a quartz crystal, and he traveled around and he met up with us on tour. And I didn't know anything about crystals or really have any interest in them whatsoever at the time. I just kept it because it was a gift from a dear friend. When I went to Egypt, I had the crystal in my pocket when I went inside the pyramid. And when I came out, I didn't look at it immediately. I wasn't looking for anything specific. But I noticed later when I pulled the crystal that I had for a while back out, there was like a translucent, almost like rainbow texture inside of the
Mm-hmm.
quartz crystal. And it's
Mm-hmm.
unmistakable. It was 100% for sure after the fact. And I don't know what that even means or how that correlates to anything you said, but I feel it may have had something to do with the energy there in Egypt or the power in the pyramid, or there's something to the quartz crystal mixed with going inside the pyramid, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I think that one of the things that I learned when I was researching the book on angels is that idea of, I think it's called quantum entanglement,
Mhm.
where anything that has been in connection with something else at any time, space or time, at any distance from the far reaches of the edges of the galaxy to you and me, once we're connected, we stay connected. And I think that that's an example of, that showing up inside the crystal. It came from the earth, you know,
Wow.
and I'm pretty sure that there's crystalline grids all around. Well, there has to be all around the pyramid because it's sitting in the sand, which is made of crystals. And so they're all part of each other. I think that crystal in your pocket was resonating with the crystal surrounding where you were.
Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They had said they took me in one, I don't know if it was a meditation area dedicated to Akhenaten or I'm not sure what it was. It was just like a caved out part where you couldn't go on a normal tour, and there was apparently quartz within the granite. I believe the rock is made of granite, right? And they
Yeah,
said there
yeah,
was quartz within that, and you could kind of see a sparkle. It's very interesting.
right, right.
Another quote from you, Normandi. You wrote, "Often in my neurotic youth, I couldn't figure out the next step in my life. Always I felt called to follow a spiritual path. In fact, I recall my first husband saying, 'You act like you are on a mission from God.' I thought, 'Of course, so are you. You just don't recognize it.' Sometimes sitting on my porch, I prayed for a big white panel van with an arrow on it to pass by the house. That van would give me clear direction in a message painted in letters 2 feet high. 'Normandy, go this way.' But the van never arrived. Or did it on the waters in Egypt? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
It was a submarine, yellow submarine."
yeah. And again, the more I learn about astrology, the more I see what happens to us as like the big panel truck that we just overlooked. We were sitting on the porch licking our ice cream cone, and here comes this big panel truck. Go this way. And we're just mid lick. Oh, what was that? You know?
Mid-lick.
But
That's
that's
shout
what
out
we
to
said. We
Kevin.
said, what is that? What is that? And so I've had, a lot of stuff going on right now with my life. Like I feel myself in the midst of this very major change at the age of 72. Hey, it's expected. But I thought, when when have I had this much stuff in my life where it feels like I'm leaving behind something and starting something new, and I don't know what it is. And it's a little scary, but that's where I am right now. And so I said, what is going on in my chart? And so again, I'm going back to that eclipse that was in March. Okay. Very final degrees of Pisces. And so it's like, I look it up. Eclipses happen every, I don't know, they happen every 18 years. An eclipse will return to the same spot that it was. Okay. And that particular eclipse hit something in my chart. And I thought, what was I doing in, 2003, I think is when it was. What was I doing then? I hate to admit it, but maybe it means I've had an interesting life. I couldn't remember 2003. I had to go back and look at my CV. What was I doing then? You know? So I went back and realized that 2003 was the time when I left being an artist in the schools, teaching children how to write poetry, how to, really get into their creative mojo. I loved doing it. I loved it. But the funding from the government came out from under everybody's feet at that time. And so the program closed, and I could no longer do that. I could no longer travel around the state teaching children how to write poetry and how to love poetry, which, by the way, I loved the poem that you just read at the beginning. I want a copy of it. So I found that year was the year that I ended up more and more teaching people in Egypt, taking trips to Egypt, leading trips to Egypt. 2003, I began in earnest. That was what I was doing. And the bridge that I want to mention that surprised me is that the final project for the last class that I taught, which was a year-long installation of an artistic project, it taught mathematics, it taught history, it taught literature, and it was a pop-up book of ancient Egypt. And so I got the kids engaged in making this pop-up book in art class and history class and social studies class and literature class. And they were writing myths and they were translating hieroglyphs. And, they were making decoder rings. They were having pyramids pop up in the middle of the books and stuff. And they had to, figure out how to do this with precision, making these cuts and so on in the paper. And it was so exciting. And I had a copy of it. I had done my own. And I found this book the other day. And I thought, wow, that was the most amazing time of my life. And that's what I was doing. And I realized I don't know what's coming, but I'm at that exact same moment now where I was then. So it's kind of exciting. It's a little bit scary. It's a little uncertain because there's a lot of, how shall I say, right now, some financial risk going on, as well as physical obstacles to overcome. But it's interesting. It's probably not going to happen again in my lifetime. This is the last time I'll be 90 something when the next one hits. I don't think I'll be here. I like to think your eclipse and your age and your astrology follows you. Even Kafka still can have his chart looked at and see what his influence is now. But I won't be here. So it's interesting. This is the last chapter.
So you say. We'll see what happens. But yes.
I just want to know where it's going, It's been a page turner the whole time.
I just started at Pacifica. I'm getting my master's in depth psychology and creativity. I started 2 days ago.
fantastic.
Yeah. And so I was reading one of my assignments at 5 a.m. this morning. I've actually read some of it, but I'm reading Memories, Dreams, Reflections. And you're reminding me of the way you're speaking of reflecting on your life, the way that Jung begins his kind of entry point into that book, because he resisted writing an autobiography so fiercely because he believes that there's no way to have a true perspective of yourself externally. So his whole point was tracking this inner progression, which is, again, kind of what you're talking about, this rich something that's been talking to you forever. And the rhizome, I love the word rhizome that he discusses as this awareness of an eternal something beneath the blossoming and the wilting and the changing of the forms.
I'm not exactly writing in my autobiography, but I think this is probably the book I'm working on right now, which I'm almost finished with. Is probably the most important book I've ever worked on. And I've liked a lot of my books. But this is a look at the books of the afterlife for 3,000 years worth. So from the pyramid text through the coffin text through the Book of the Dead. And I'm taking all of the texts that I can find in that tradition and investigating the soul contract that those books represent. And then I'm creating, I guess I'm mixing genres again, journal prompts, so that people can go through and look at it and say, oh, that's what, the fourth hour of the underworld means. These are the questions I need to answer.
And it's a
and
pop-up.
So I'm going through it myself.
It's a pop-up book.
It is a pop-up book.
Well, Normandi, if you don't mind me asking, what sparked your interest initially before maybe your first book in this whole lane of study? Was there anything in your childhood or as you were growing up that kind of drove you in the direction of this, for lack of a better term, kind of esoteric approach? I think it's incredible.
I think there were a number of confluences, kind of like the way the Nile is a river that's fed by many tributaries. But one of those major tributaries is that I had an aunt who was a spiritualist minister. So she talked to dead people, and I was fascinated with her. My family was fascinated with her. They told stories about her, oh, your Aunt Arzelia, she used to do blah, 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 and Aunt Arzelia was one of those people who would meet you at breakfast and say, your brother Marshall was just here. Marshall had passed a couple of years ago. And so people would either be happy to hear about it or they wouldn't be. So that's one thing that brought me interested in spiritualism. And then the other thing is that my friend Robert, I think we talked about this the first time. Is that right? My friend Robert,
a little bit, yeah,
died. But before he died, he told me I needed to look at the Book of the Dead, walked me across the street to the bookstore where the book was and said, get that off the shelf and buy it, And then he died, and I ended up a year later taking that book with me to Colorado when I started my master's in creative writing. And I took a translation workshop and I taught myself how to read and write hieroglyphs, which became the subject of many midnight arguments with my husband at the time, who thought I was wasting my time and energy. So, that you heard that part of that other conversation where he said, you think you're on a mission from God? But I was going to throw that book away. Awakening Osiris. I translated it. There you go. Even the brand new edition. Thank you.
My dad had the original one. This one is really cool too, but his copy burned in the fire. I think I have the original in storage. I like both. But yeah, this is the futuristic cover.
I have them both too at the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you both for
absolutely.
So now we're wasting our time.
Owning it.
I'm just joking. I was pretending your husband. Anyway. I had the privilege in the end of the last episode to read you some of your own words from this book. And so if you don't mind, it felt pretty powerful the first time. Before we began, I just opened it randomly, and I would love to read a paragraph to us, if that's okay. Becoming the hawk divine. Imagine the Ancient One speaking as if you were his dream. Old lips, grown yellow and hard, dry as bone, his mouth a beak that crushes words like seed, and after a long flight drops them to grow again in a field left untended. Imagine his eyes, amber orbs that search and catch upon the shallow breaths of a mouse stirred by restless dreams of corn. Hollow bones become swift wings, and in his dark, finely feathered skin you ride through all the lost days. Above blinding white cliffs you soar and find yourself amid rocks crumpled like paper, rocks sharp as knives, rocks heart-breakingly real as breasts. Blessed are the old ones, they shall die and soar above themselves, new men again, swift birds, strong oxen, gentle flowers nodding.
It's incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you. So back to my little map of who knows what. I'm calling this episode Overripe Angel Slang, by the way. And the overripe comes from a time I lived in Harlem for 10 years, and there was this Rasta who did not smoke weed, which my stereotypical mind found curious. His name was Tony. He became a dear friend, and him and his friends would always tease me. I was making music at the time, and they enjoyed my music, and they would always say, "You're overripe, man. You're overripe." Meaning, like, what I took it to mean is you're already right here, like in that higher thing, but you're still trying to do something, and you're not realizing you're already there, man. Like, there's nowhere to go. And the other day I was walking with my son and dog, and this woman was watering her flowers, and she looked at us and she said, "Wow, I can see your heart, and there's something about the hat." And she's like, "You're already there." And she smiled and said, "You know, you don't have to die to go there." And so Overripe Angel Slang, that's really where that comes from. Obviously your book, and how to talk about these things that are, maybe they're not ineffable. Recently reading Christopher M. Bosch's book, LSD in the Mind of the Universe, which is a game changer. He talked about this idea that things are ineffable, mystical things, psychedelic subjects are ineffable. Maybe that's not true. It's that we don't have the language for them, and we do a disservice to them by saying they're ineffable. So again, that's the angel slang concept. I have a few more quotes from your book here that we can use as perhaps, sparks.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about that. I can remember myself one time in my youth at a party, and someone asked me, "What are you going to do with your life when you grow up?" And I said to them, "I want to F the ineffable."
Oh, man.
And they just looked at me, and they kind of got a double entendre meaning from saying, "I want to F the ineffable." And they say, what are you, like sapiosexual or something? It's like, yeah, that's it.
We should do something with that as a crew. There has to, that might replace the title. That's really good. That's a t-shirt.
That is a good one.
I want to F the ineffable. Me too, for sure. Wow. Yeah. Okay, let me focus. That's perfect. So the subject of angels, this is from your book, the subject of angels is not one to be regarded as a curious notion that simply captures our imagination. It must be considered as a serious matter. Our lives may very well be affected by this knowledge. Why do reports of angels abound? Perhaps we long for what lies beyond the veil in the same way that salmon swim toward a home they've never actually known. One might say it's in our DNA. And then you go on to say about those ineffable experiences. Upon such an occasion, the rational mind kicks in, attempting to think away or interpret the message. The mind whirs as it tries to categorize and diminish the experience. Stunned by what we have seen, we keep trying to fit it into a container too small to contain it.
Normally, I know you may not know this, but I'm a psychedelic advocate. I use mushrooms ceremonially, and I've noticed that at certain times when you get to a point of what they would refer to as the purge, you go to say what feels and seems so profound, and you can't. Instead, you gag, or instead, you get sick. And I personally don't believe that those things are supposed to be said out loud. I think they're supposed to be experienced by the experiencer, right? And I don't know. I find that very interesting. There's things that it's hard to take them home. You know, you may come out with a little bit of it when you journal after the fact,
Mhm.
but I mean, we don't have the vocabulary to necessarily articulate what it is you're experiencing. But I also think it's meant to be experienced by that person alone. You know, it's like a form of initiation.
If everything is paradox, sorry, you go, Normandi.
No, I was just going to say, I think he's right.
And I agree. And in the vein of paradox, though, because everything is both at the same time, I've come across the Christopher M. Bosch idea, which went on to say that God is not hiding. God does want to share, right? And then also that Carl Jung today in the reading said basically what you said in a different way, Edward, where he had, as a child, created this little mannequin figure with a soul stone, an onyx stone that he instinctually painted, half one color and half the other, and he hid it in his pencil case and then hid that under rotten floorboards in the attic. And it was kind of his attempt, he reflected backwards on keeping a secret, or like what that meant. And then he was searching in nature for clues, like he knew there was some secret. So I 100% agree. And then I also feel like on this call right now that we are sort of sharing those secrets, and there is a ripeness to them, but of course simultaneously they're personal and our own. But there's just a gentle dance to it, if that makes any sense. And Goethe, I believe that's how you say it. It's spelled like Goethe, but Goethe, I jotted this down. His poem, The Holy Longing, it's short, but it speaks to this a bit as well. Tell a wise person or keep silent, right? That's kind of what we just said, because the masked man will mock it right away. I praise what is truly alive, what longs to be burned to death. In the calm water of the love nights, where you were begotten, where you have begotten, a strange feeling comes over you. When you see the silent candle burning, now you are no longer caught in the obsession with darkness, and a desire for higher love-making sweeps you upward. Distance does not make you falter. Now, arriving in magic, flying, and finally insane for the light, you are the butterfly and you are gone. And so long as you haven't experienced this, to die, and so to grow, you are only a troubled guest on the dark earth. So I think of tones, and aren't the stones of Egypt connected to tones and ideas that perhaps some of those stones were moved by tonal orchestration? Is that
acoustic levitation or something like that?
Yes.
So I'm just thinking of all of these things connected, that an angel slang, like how do you speak about what can't be spoken about, but still kind of chuckle and feel the connection without defining it and doing what the mind is trying to do, like your quote said, that's kind of the dance.
To chime in there, I feel like sometimes those ineffable moments that we may experience that we feel we don't have the vocabulary to articulate may serve as symbols or something like a hieroglyphic that are meant to be lived out and used as an example as opposed to told in the streets, right? Like this lesson that I just learned, I'm not supposed to go say it because then it could be taken as crazy and boomerang back in a way that is not going to help me after all, after sacrificing the experience and going through this, right? But more of a something for me to hold within my heart, or anyone on this call to hold within your heart and go live that lesson by being the example.
I want to speak to that, Edward, because I don't know why, it's reminding me of something that I learned when I was a young Episcopalian growing up. And that was that Moses, when they were out in the desert and everybody had their tents, he had his tent at some distance and he would go off in his tent and he would pray. And they would see this cloud descending over top of his tent, and they knew that he was communing with God. And so everybody else would go inside their tent and sit and pray. But they never knew what Moses and God inside the cloud were saying. It was never spoken of. It was just observed, And I think that's, you're right. You can't go tell it on the street. It was a secret that had to be hidden in so much inside the heart, like that stone that's hidden up inside, the attic that Zach was talking about. Or, I used to write myself affirmations and manifestations that I was working on, and I would put them in an envelope, and then I would hide them from myself so that it would take me a while to find them again. But in the process, when I found it, I would say, oh, yeah, I was working on that.
Exactly.
Isn't that incredible? That's really incredible, the affirmations.
Yeah.
See, I've done a similar thing in the sense of the affirmations. I've taken them and putting them in, like, I'll say them myself, record them, and then put them on top of binaural beats. And it almost feels like you're, I don't want to say hypnotized, but training yourself or reprogramming your own subconscious mind, in the direction that you desire, as opposed to living on a whim.
Right. I like that. That's good. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to say was that one time when I was younger, doing a little bit of mental house cleaning, and I'd taken a shot of, a hit of LSD, and couldn't talk about it, of course, because it was just too much. I couldn't F the ineffable. But I managed to crawl across the floor to a box of crayons. I wanted to type like Jack Kerouac at that moment and couldn't figure out how to operate these things at the ends of my arms. But I found this box of crayons, and I got one out, and I got a piece of paper out, and that was it. That was the answer to my dilemma of how to fix it. So, felt satisfied. I had gotten it out, and I went off and did something else, found myself asleep, whatever. Came back to my apartment a couple of days later and saw this folded up piece of paper sitting on top of my typewriter that I had forgotten how to operate, that I'd even forgotten I'd used the crayons, and opened it up. And I said, oh my God, I was like shaking. This is the secret to the universe. And I opened it up, and it said, everything is okay.
Wow.
All right.
And that's what you wrote with the crayon.
That's what I wrote. Everything
incredible.
is okay.
That's incredible. Before my mother had passed, she would remind me frequently to be creative, because I came up creative. Long story short, and I got into the business lane, and it's very acidic. Business can be very acidic. My mother would remind me all the time, be creative, remember to be creative. And then out of nowhere, this guy came from out of town, an incredible visual artist named Rhyme. He came from out of town and wanted to come visit me through a mutual friend. Neither one of us really knew why he wanted to come visit. He came and visited. We did a ceremony together, psychedelic ceremony, kind of like you're referring to. And all of a sudden, he's handing me journals and pens, and he's telling me to write what's on my mind. He's handing me drums and singing bowls and markers to draw. And when it was all said and done, I'd picked back up creativity and found the love again. And he looked at me, still in the zone that we were in, and he said, "Now I know why I came." We literally had no knowledge of why. And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "To remind you to be creative." And he did
Yeah.
not know that my mother had been telling me that before she passed. So it felt like the universe speaking to me saying, "Hey man, it's time for you to be creative." And ever since then,
Yes.
I'm just the most creative I've been in 20 years, and it's the most fulfilling I've felt. So I feel like creativity is medicine for the soul.
Yes.
Creativity, I think, is our innate way of processing everything. So even not as an artist, James Hillman would talk about, the moment you can imagine yourself as a character in myth, or Jung talking about myth is the only way to actually get close to explaining the experience, because it's the same thing we're talking about. You can't talk about what it is to be you. You don't even know what you are or how you are. So it's only through this mythical, creative, entry, as opposed to being the victim of your childhood or all these different things. You can kind of see yourself in the Baba Yaga or the child who was caught by the witch, but it becomes this different sort of creative, way to survive. And that's why I'm doing this master's program. That's why I think I create so ferociously, is because I am a sensitive guy. And it's funny, my wife said yesterday, my son is in AYSO soccer, and the coach is like Luke Wilson, man. He's like chill as hell. He's awesome. I love this guy. He's the complete opposite of me. He's like just even keeled. He probably operates like right here, and he's so calming. He's such a good coach. He's so grounding. I feel grounded around him. But for those of us who are, the whole day can just be so many different sensitivities to everything, the creativity is the only way that I can survive. And then that actually, like the crayon symbol, everything is okay, or whatever it may be, just doing this podcast together, I've digested all of that energy, all of that emotion in a way that now becomes outside of myself, symbolized. But a quote from your book by a rabid rabbi named David Cooper that stuck out to me is, "God is a verb." And I really love that. And that's kind of connected to what I'm saying, because Michael Meade, when they asked me in my first assignment for Pacifica, is there a purpose of art? Can you even speak about purpose when talking of art? Can we even decide on a definition of art? I thought of Michael Meade telling me on this podcast, so basically he says, every act of creation repeats the original creation, and the world must constantly be recreated. And another quote by someone I'm forgetting, that everything worth saying has already been said, but nobody was listening, so we have to say it again. So I think there's something about that, like, do it till you're done creating, or Hafez saying all these words are just a front. In truth, I want to chain myself to your body and sing for days and days. Or Rumi talking about the field beyond ideas of right and wrong. There is a field, I will meet you there. Or Rumi being asked why he writes so much about silence, and he says, the radiant one in me has never said a word. Anyway, I know I'm a poetry vending machine, but a little break in the program to just shout out a name worth mentioning. We have to take a moment to shine light on this gentleman that I discovered in your book. The quote which reveals this character, and for centuries, clerics dubbed Rabbi Eliezer ben Judah of Worms, a madman obsessed with analyzing and conjuring angels. Rabbi Eliezer ben Judah of Worms.
Yeah.
Do you remember that guy?
Yeah, he's pretty fascinating. He gave up everything for the angels. It was like I love that guy. I love thinking about him. I love the fact that taught his students to not pray in vain, you know, to not, because it's a sacred trust working with an angel. And so, he told them, don't do it randomly. And there was a story in there, I know you read it, about the people that wanted to go to a friend's house. He was having a party and they had to cross a difficult place in the woods. And they thought that they would be preserved if they talked to the angels. And so they did. And the angels did protect them because angels are bound to serve. But the rabbi was not happy. And he said, you're abusing a holy trust with those angels. If you want to cross that dangerous place, which I told you not to cross, you go and do it again and go without the angels. And so they did. And they died.
Wow.
It's like, so there's a couple of things about that. At first I was like, why would he do that? Except then there's this understanding that even when they're dead, they're still not gone. Exactly. They're just in another dimension where they have learned their lesson in a way that they could never have learned the lesson if they had their, skin rags on. So, yeah, it was interesting, his wife and his daughter were killed because, they thought that he was rich because he knew all about angels and could know all these spells and stuff. Well, no, they had money at that time because his wife was kind of I don't know, she had a auction shop of some type. And they came in and they stole the money and they stole the books and killed his wife and his daughter and thought that they would make him shut up. And it didn't. He just kept going. Now, on this same vein, I want to mention and do a shout out. I don't know, maybe I can put you in touch with him if you want. There's a friend of mine who is very much an angelologist. He is a farmer who works and does the most amazing crops and farmers markets, and his produce is miraculous, beautiful produce, highly charged. And he's just written a book on how to use angels in the field.
That's beautiful.
And it's quite amazing. And it's called, let's see, what is it called? The Cunning Farmer is what he calls his book, The Cunning Farmer. And he makes sigils and writes prayers and creates ceremonies based on astrology and the moon and alchemy and all kinds of stuff.
Beautiful. Would love to.
He's quite amazing. And his book is coming out this year. And I just want to mention his name is Todd Elliott.
Todd Elliott.
Sounds incredible. I'll have to check that out.
I want to try
it's
his
pretty
tomato.
Interesting. It'll come out from Inner Traditions.
Beautiful. So I've always been fascinated with westernized interpretations of some of these ancient practices, and you're reminding me of that. So manifestation has always seemed suspect to me when it's wielded in the Western world most of the time, because who is trying to manifest? You know what I mean? Like in yourself, I want this. And so quotes like, "Those who the gods wish to punish, they answer their prayers," reminds me of what the story you just told. And so I believe it's T.S. Eliot who said, "I said to my soul, be still and wait without hope, for hope would be hope for the wrong thing." So there's such a dance, and I actually feel kind of like goosebumps a little bit saying that. It feels important. It's such a dance. But back to...
I think you should say that again, because I think everybody needs to hear that again.
Well, the first one is, "Those who the gods wish to punish, they answer their prayers." Or the other version is, "Those who the gods wish to punish, they first make famous."
Wow.
But the other one is, I believe, by T.S. Eliot. I said to my soul, be still and wait without hope, for hope would be hope for the wrong thing.
Thank you.
Does that allude to relying more on faith?
To me, it alludes to all these ways that we babble or travel or fall or fly. Hopefully we arrive at the place. I did an episode with Ruth Strasberg, the woman who sent me the quotes. Incredible story. But we jokingly, she was like, I'll do an episode with you because you and I go right to the place. And I was like, that's the name of the episode, the place, because that's the only way to say it. It's the place. I'll see you at the spot. It's the place. I think when you're in the place, which is always here, it's like, sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. That's what Rumi says. It's just, to me, that state of what T.S. being still is like, I don't know, like, I'm just happy to be here. I'm just in awe of how loved I am, and I trust that I will be shown, given exactly what I'm supposed to do. And maybe that's like the hollow bone, like your hawk piece, but also like the true, certain elders say their goal is to become the hollow bone, meaning to remove every piece of your identity so you become just a pure bone through which they speak. And so then you are being precise. Then one passing stranger can relay the message that hits right at the time. I don't know, something like that. I just know that every time I've tried to manifest certain things that were sneakily somehow hidden to or connected to fear or pride, they don't work for me. And I've watched them work for a lot of people around me and been confused. And now I see it's a great blessing.
Well, I think like with anything, whether it's magic or manifestation, I mean, there's whatever you want to call it or whatever outfit you want to put on it, there's obviously a consequence or a reward depending on how you cast these things, right? So if you put something out there that's going to damage someone, you can probably count on that damage reciprocating and coming back to you in some capacity, right? Like in some way, shape, or form, whatever it is you're putting out, as above, so below, it's going to circle back around. So I don't know. To me, it meant like it felt like that was leaning towards the hope. Would it be the hope for the wrong thing? To me, kind of leans more on faith. And I don't necessarily mean religious faith. I just mean faith in your heart, faith in yourself.
Two things, and then Normandi, please flow. There's two things. That one is the Arjuna scene with Vishnu and Arjuna, and Vishnu saying, when Arjuna's going into battle and he's like, I don't want to kill my cousins, basically. And Vishnu says, you, like I, am eternal. But when you're here, play your role accordingly and do it. So go kill your cousin if that's what you're supposed to do. That's one. Two, I'm at the gym today and I'm releasing the God Help Me I'm Awake poetry-inspired coffee, this book. And it's just like a little club that Edward used to roll. You know about it. Anyway, I'll tell you in the future. But I'm there. This older gentleman gives me a bag of coffee from Africa because he knows I'm putting out coffee. This friend of mine at the gym who I don't really know comes up. Anyway, this conversation sparks. And I explain the way the book works in these quotes, and you roll 3 dice and the outcome, there's 216 outcomes. So there's 3 dice that come with the book and 216 quotes. And I don't have it yet. It's being printed. And I say, pick a number. He says 56. I look in the book, and it's a quote from my best friend Taylor, who passed away. And the quote says, a broken man is not weak. A broken man is the strongest man in the world. And the guy starts crying. Literally, this giant, huge dude who's such a beautiful spirit, and he starts crying. And Bear's Belly speaks the same thing where he says, when they took everything from us or you, your only true power lies in spirit. So you are anyone who's been completely broken of this material world is the most powerful person, because they know that that is the only true power. And so that quote, not to be like, I'm just flowing with you guys, but I think of the Holy Grail. That quote to me means I am in service. So if you need me to go hurt someone and it's true, I'll do that. I don't want to. I don't think that's my destiny. I get to be a playful poet. But there are times when the snake must strike. So to me, the young Parsival, when I was in the mental hospital, when I was 24, was like my first Grail experience. But I was cast out because I thought it was all about me. But when you return to the Grail, if you're lucky, like T.S. Eliot, the answer is, who does the Grail serve? The Grail serves the Grail King. So that's the waiting in silence. It's like, wow, thanks God, I get to be here. Just tell me what to do, whatever that may be, if that makes sense. Sorry to babble.
No, that makes a lot of
that's
sense.
beautiful. Beautiful.
I agree.
And I agree. And then we kill our don't believe your beliefs, all that kind of jazz, yada, yada, yada.
But I think it's part of the fun of like we say, the creative adult is a child who survived, is having the freedom to rant, philosophical rants or any kind of rants, and not necessarily subscribe to anything that you allow to come out of you, like your poetry, right? Or like my rants. I don't know. I find that very interesting. Like it's a good use of your imagination as an adult, and to not be locked down to too many mental subscriptions, right? Or anything that
You just said it. You just said it. To me, the myths, when they become literalized or clung to, immediately reverberate back and the doors are closed. That's the difference, That's why stone tablets to me are dangerous, because they become concretized too literally. They're fine if you then remember that tomorrow you might want to crawl over to the crayons and scribble something else. But, we've said a lot. I know that, I hope to have you on this show many, many more eclipses. So you might have to stick around, or at least, figure out, I'll be a hollow bone and you can use me as a tuning fork or something. But just in the final little moments of our journey, I want to see what else I wrote that feels important. So I do really like, we are all part of the collective conscious mind of God in conversation with itself. So refined is the intelligence of the one great light. Meister Eckhart says that if a tiny fragment or a little spark were to fall from him, it would fill this whole world with rapture and bliss. Which reminded me of the part of your book where one of the angels, I forget which one, requests 18,000 wings to try and fly around the pillar at the foot of the throne of God. And then after flying for like an eternity, he's like, am I there yet? And they're like, you haven't even started to like round the first beginning of the foot. So he gets another 18,000 wings and another 18,000 wings. And even if he literally flew for eternity, he hadn't even begun to turn the corner of the pillar at the foot of the throne of God.
Right.
So I think effing the ineffable requires the stamina and the stubbornness of a fire ant who just has endless lives. I don't know. But I really like that part. And I wanted to speak about the World Weary Man. If you are familiar with that surviving papyrus script, that may be the oldest piece of writing.
I know it by a different name, but yes, I know the translation by Bika Reed.
Okay.
Is that the one you're talking about?
It's apparently the oldest surviving text of human history, and it's basically written, in my understanding, by someone in Egypt during the fall of Egypt, saying, basically, I want to kill myself, and men have turned corrupt. It sounds like the golden age of Egypt's descent was beginning to happen, and this guy was there, which is very eerily similar, talking about 18-year patterns, and these patterns like of right now, it could have been written today. And then the conversation goes on where his soul speaks to him as to why he should continue. And it reminded me of our conversation last time, which I wrote down as the poetry prescription, but that period where you were feeling pretty low and for different reasons. And then you used one of your favorite poets via audio recordings to kind of get out of bed. Thought that was so beautiful. And then you went on your cane to Egypt and returned walking. So, you know, for people out there who are weary right now, and there's a lot of weariness, I just see it. For some reason, I've been happier than I've ever been for the past few months, and I feel almost guilty of that. Like, I feel like I have to dim my light around people because I shouldn't be so happy. And it's not like I'm not having, you know, headaches and nausea, and my wife's brother passed, and it's hard to be a dad, and we're in a heat wave, and life is life. But I feel this giddy glee. And so, yeah, I guess I just spoke to it. But I was fascinated with the idea that the golden age and the ages are cyclical as well, and that we are coming out of the dark ages. So perhaps that text was written at the decline of the golden age, then silver, then bronze, then dark. Now we're just coming up out of dark into bronze, which is why, you know, the energy information has been coming online the past 200 years, nuclear energy, etc. It's nice for me to know, to zoom out and just see, oh, okay, this is where we are in the play. This is act 3 again, and this is this stage and the props, and so is probably going to kill me, or I'm the villain, you know. And then Terence McKenna, my dad loves him, and Edward, I know you and my dad have similar, you know, passion for his work. And apparently Terence said something like, this whole human thing is just, when we meet each other, we're just checking to see if our costumes are on straight. I think mine is crooked today in general. That's the problem. But yeah, I could go on and babble. I've written so many things down, but I'm grateful, and anything you guys want to say, and I hope we can do this as many times as we all want to.
Well, I will be here whenever you ask me.
Thank you.
It was an honor to get to be here and talk with you, Normandi and Zach. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Edward. It was great to be with you.
Since you're feeling, I can sense we're all at the end of our flow. I'm going to read one more thing from your book because I want you to have the final word. All right, here we go. Remembering his name. At night in this house of fire, I recount the sadness of years. I tell the story of months. Give me my name. Say it over red jasper, dipped in an unguent of flowers. When I had no visions, ravens came from my eyes. The breath of life escaped. When I had no words, worms crawled through my teeth. I am more than flesh and bone. I am more than the deeds I have done. I am more than all I remember. Give me my name. Say it over red jasper laid in the heart of sycamore. Give me my name, that gods may call me to soar like the hawk and crane.
That's incredible.
F the ineffable. I think we just did some heavy petting with the ineffable. I don't know if we F'd it.
I like that.
The doctor believes you can fly and therefore prescribed you anchors. In truth, the doctor knows he can fly and is terrified of this ungrounding. Becoming cobweb master tangling the flock. And can you blame him? Would you send your child out into these skies? These terrible skies? I await the system overload, eagerly, fearfully, quivering with spectrums plus, call and echo, branch to root. Someone said we're born as blank slates, and I heard the architect laugh. With a blue collar and a golden sax, the handsome woman adjusts her notes to complement the storm. Play. A sideways locomotive cries for tracks, wheels spinning in thin air. Phone hot in palms, desperate to explain. I found a place beyond the map's description, and this I must protect. Skull and crossbones warn and invite those who crave what they already possess. Some cut holes in their skulls to let God in. Can our soft spot be not so literal and still so essentially extreme? I guess nobody is somebody to someone somewhere. Well, in dog years, at least I'm wise.
Pronounce horns like horns. Only God rhymes with orange. Origins of these orphans. Foreigners on the shores again. Kevin's chords like doors within. Knock, knock, it's a long shot. Sniper snoozing on the job drop. Rifle oozing out raindrops. She recorded thunder in a strange apartment. Compartmentalized dreams. Never made art. I was carving hearts in trees. Initial switch, but it's the same she. Don't play with me unless you juggle seeds and have the same disease. The real version is a bootlegged up tape. Hit him with the love-hate root egg. Two heads, one begs, other one well-fed. Who says what's right, left of the true essence? And every sign says Chicago, no iller boy than my guy in Illinois. Let's ride roads, eyes closed, and see what these tires know. I'm tired though, take the wheel, wake me when you find home. Petty with the mixed notes, heady with the whiz quotes. Quacks pissed, you hate horns, angrily he swim floats. Easy does it.
Yeah?
And there's horns.
Horns?
Horns.
Horns?
Can't see.
That's
Horns.
I love the way you say it.
Horns.
Horns. I'm excited about this, especially seeing his horns.